You want to make sure that it is actually addressing the needs of the population that you have. Every company has different populations. I know one of the things that's come up is people that are not at their desk every day, people that are in construction or in park maintenance. Their experience with technology is on a mobile app, not day to day like desktop. So for them, it's really being where they're at and making sure that they've been given the right training, that the right experience is being provided for them.
Welcome to People, Process, Then HR Tech, a series where we talk about how to put people and process before we think about the technology. I'm Sid Kaitan, a senior product marketing manager here at Beekeeper. Beekeeper is the frontline employee app that is designed to help both HR teams and frontline workers connect to each other and the company resources and communications they need to do their best work. Today, we are joined by Kristin McDonald. Kristin, can you start by just giving us a quick intro about yourself?
Sure, Sid. Hi, I'm Kristin McDonald. I work in many different hats, I should say, but one of them being HR tech consultant. It's primarily within the Workday ecosystem. I've been in HR for 20 years or so, and I specialize in program management, product management, system rollouts and enhancements, and really optimizing HR processes, especially within HR technology.
Implementations, they're tough. I'm curious, just with all the experience you've had, what are some of those problems you've run into during the process?
There's been a few for sure. I think so many things can come up, and I think a lot of that's driven from the beginning. How do you make those decisions? Are you making the right decisions, involving the right people, and your implementation all the way through post go live? It's so easy to see the shiny new technology and think that I got to go get that because there's so much in HR technology. Like you look at the list, it's just overwhelming. And so where we're at today is most companies at this point have systems, right, for the different parts of the employee life cycle. So if they're doing anything, they're replacing or they're adding. So I think a lot of it is just from the beginning, are you making the right decision for the platform that you're adding or replacing? Because it's a big investment. Are you inviting the right people into the room to make sure that the technology you have today is not meeting the mark, is not addressing the needs that the business has? Because maybe you aren't talking to the right end users, or your employees, your managers, your HR professionals that are in it day and day, the ones using it, and really understanding if it's not working for the goals that you have or the outcomes you're looking to have for the next year, 5 years, or if there's simply just a little bit of a gap and maybe there's something that can be addressed by speaking to the vendor or looking at your current processes and reevaluating them. So I think sometimes it can just stem from the very beginning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it seems like, by the time that some of this crosses your desk, we're in implementation mode. I'm curious, when you're working with clients, what are some examples of how you see this go wrong?
If you're not having the right people in the room, if you're not getting that buy-in from the beginning and making sure they're going to be advocates and it's providing the experience and it's empowering them and enabling them the way that you want them to, right? Then it's not going to be something successful when you go live. You want to make sure that it is actually addressing the needs of the population that you have. Every company has different populations. I know one of the things that's come up is people that are not at their desk every day, people that are in construction or in park maintenance. Their experience with technology is on a mobile app, not day to day like desktop. So for them, it's really being where they're at and making sure that they've been given the right training, that the right experience is being provided for them. And so really being thoughtful of who is using the platform and that it's working for them and that they know how to use it. And that takes a lot, right? That's a lot of training. And that's just not a one-time thing. It's a continuous thing. I think of like HR business partners who are the ones really the first person employees and managers are going to. Like, you need your HR business partners to know how the system works and be one of your biggest advocates for it. So you just really have to be thoughtful of, if you're introducing a new system, how the end users are enabled and that you're really monitoring adoption. And I think that's the biggest thing, that things can go wrong is it's one thing to implement a system. It's quite another for post go live, that ongoing adoption and usage and making sure everybody's comfortable. That's another thing that I really feel strongly about is having a strong post go live plan and making sure that that's really thought through as you go through the implementation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on a really big point, which is there's the frontline, which has their own unique needs that desktop workers don't necessarily have. And then there's also these HR business partners that are the frontline for the frontline. So
Right.
they're
Yeah.
they're the ones that are actually inside of the tool and making big decisions after there's the go live. So, what questions should HR leaders ask themselves, the rest of their organization, to make sure that they are ready once it's time to implement software?
Some of the questions that need to be asked, I don't know if there's enough to really document or understand current processes. What does the day to day look like for the different personas that you have, the different end users, and really identifying how they're using technology today. They do have feedback or things that aren't working or things that are working, and have we done a true analysis and understanding of that? And this is important to the conversation of even looking at new technology. Have we even done the work to know what's currently working and what's not in our current processes? And so really that, and that's just something to be ongoing. I think that's like a hygiene that a lot of companies should have, is just ongoing review of their processes. Are they optimized? Are they working as intended? Is the experience what we want employees to have? And if you're doing that, if you create that hygiene, that's a much faster and easier conversation when you are looking at your current HR tech stack and evaluating if you need to make a move if it's not working anymore. If I think about the employee life cycle, it's huge, from everything from acquiring talent all the way to offboarding talent. And when you look at replacing an HR platform or adding to it, I just think the right questions need to include what are our current processes? How are employees using it today? What do they need? Where are we going as an organization? And just making sure the right people are in the room to have those conversations. Because then you're making a decision that feels more like people are brought in rather than just being forced to accept a new technology.
What you said really seems to fit into this thesis of people, process, then HR tech. So I
Exactly.
love that.
Technology is supposed to be there for the people and your processes, right? It's supposed to enable and empower. It's not a standalone. It's supposed to be part of it, all of it.
Yeah. Kind of related is, of course, HR teams rely on your expertise to implement software like Workday. I'm curious, what is helpful for you to know? I think a really interesting one you said was, where's the organization going to be skating to where the puck is at? What do you wish you knew more of when HR teams come to you with their needs?
It's so hard sometimes to walk into an organization and not have all the backstory, all the context. And that's why I feel sometimes it can be more successful if you work for the company because you know what the pain points are. You hear like the water cooler chatter of kind of what's going on. But it's also nice to come in and with a fresh set of eyes and know what the system can do. You want to know what the processes are. You want to know what goals they have for the upcoming year or years beyond that. More about their employee population, what are their needs? Where are they going with their talent? What is the work that they're doing? It needs to be a thorough understanding, almost like you work for the organization and you're getting all the data that you need. How are you structured? How do managers work with their employees? What does the day to day work look like? How would you want technology to enable employees? How is it not enabling them? So it's almost like when you want to do that due diligence for looking for new HR tech, it's doing the same due diligence when you come in and really just making sure that you're getting everything you need. And then coming to the table with, all right, if you're implementing, do you have the right resources? What team do you have in place to maintain and manage the system going forward? If they're replacing a system, if you had a team that was working on the old technology, what's your plan to make sure they know and understand the new technology? So it's a little bit of a give and take, understanding the business and where they're going and what their needs are, but then being able to say, like, this is what you need, or me being able to see, here's just some of your gaps in order for you to be successful.
I always think the best consultants are the ones who say, sometimes you might not need me. And it was really interesting that you said that. Like being in house has its own perspective. But when it comes to actually understanding the product and what it can do for you and extending the value, the change management, that's where your expertise is so important and valuable to have that implementation partner who can guide you through this process. Okay, so let's shift gears to the post live. I'm sure this
Yeah.
is probably where a lot of your
Thank you.
time is spent, so it's even more fun. So once it's time for go live, how do you ensure that your client is getting the most out of that technology? Being able to even communicate here, this is the ROI of it, and making sure, I guess, the whole organization understands what's going to happen next.
So if I've been brought in more post go live and I wasn't there kind of from the beginning, I think there needs to be a true understanding of what they've configured, how the system is working. And then from there, it's really a couple of things, making sure they have the conversation about roles and responsibilities and who's doing what, because I've come into organizations where they have one person handling one aspect of the employee life cycle, entering this. And then let's say that's onboarding or job changes. And then you have payroll over here and they're doing their part, but no one's talking to each other. They don't know that what they're doing over here with the job change affects other things, including the downstream impacts to payroll. So some of it is also just, have you all gotten the training that you need to understand exactly what, like, as you go to enter a job change, for instance, do you know that this field will actually, whatever you put here will change XYZ? Because I've seen where wrong information was put in and the downstream impacts can be a lot because you're talking about employees and you're talking about a lot of different data points about them and things that will be pulled into other parts of the system. So it's talking about roles and responsibilities. It's ensuring that they have the right resources in place to manage the system on an ongoing basis. You can have the most successful implementation. Everything's, all your data is in there, everything's turned on, things are working. But if you don't have an ongoing plan to manage and maintain it with the right people who know how the system works, then that's where people start to blame the technology. Well, the technology can't do this. So maybe it's not that. Did you look at it? Maybe it's like a people problem. Maybe it's the process that you've configured.
Yeah, and that's an interesting theme you brought up because the implementation is one part, and then the ongoing maintenance and ensuring adoption is a whole different ballgame. How would
Yeah.
you split up or outline the difference there? What has to happen from a ongoing maintenance standpoint that's different from the implementation?
Honestly, I think the ongoing maintenance should be part of the implementation. I don't think you can have a successful implementation plan without establishing what happens next. When you go through implementation, whatever partner you have, if you're working with the vendor, if the vendor has a partner, whatever that looks like, make sure that the people that are going to be using the system, the point of maintaining and managing it, that I would love to see it where they're brought in and they're learning right alongside. Like when things are being configured, they're learning it or they're getting the right training to really get a deep dive into how it works. Because I have seen where people get handed a system and it's basically like, good luck. Oh, and maybe some of that also is on the company to put dollars aside for training. Like that's part of your investment is the training of your employees that are going to be using it. So I think it's not a divide so much as just when you go to implement, just make sure you have a plan for post go live between the resources. How are you going to monitor adoption? What are your success metrics for adoption? Like you wanted this new system to do this. How are you going to make sure that you're doing what you can to make it a success?
So, what's also very unique from our last conversations, where that you've also been in the practitioner role. What are some of the lessons you've learned on that side of the house, basically being in house or being responsible for implementations while you're at the company?
Oh gosh, so many. I have been put in the position where I had no training. I've been put in the position where I've been handed a system. I've been put in the position where I come in 5 years later, a post go live, and there's just a lot of complaining or the opportunities that people say there are. In a way, I mean, I love tinkering with technology, so I always saw it as a challenge and just going in and learning and being able to suggest some recommendations or some things to improve it. But I think being a practitioner and being in the position to see how technology works and being talent acquisition teams and talent management teams and talent development teams and sitting in businesses and maintaining the different systems is it gives me a different perspective of what it means to be handed a technology or when you replace a technology. I cannot stress this enough, the importance of having a strong team to maintain it and manage it going forward. The only success I have seen is when you have a team that is dedicated to that technology. I think you really need people who are dedicated to it because technology changes so fast, and being on top of it, continuously learning, continuously tinkering, and seeing how the technology evolves so that you can be a partner to your different business partners to be like, hey, the system can now do this, which would be a benefit. Let's think about changing this. So it's given me a different perspective being in that to know what you need when you're implementing it.
Yeah. It sounds like you need a clear owner, right, that can help own the technology and then even liaise with someone like you who can help with the implementation and really getting the most out
Yeah,
of the
you do
product.
need a clear owner. I don't think it works. I mean, it can work, but I think I've seen it work the best when you have a clear owner, whether that be a team, depending on how big your company is, whether that be one person, and someone who really can help provide oversight over the entire platform, depending on if that's just a standalone talent acquisition system or a Workday or Success Factors that's bigger. I really think that that knowledge and awareness is so important to technology enablement and success. I really do.
This is a super tough question, but I'm going to try it
Oh,
anyways. So, giving you some runway and a heads up. Okay.
appreciate it.
With every with everything you're saying, right? Now, when you go to a C-suite executive and say, "Hey, I'm going to need an owner, I'm going to need the technology, I'm going to need an implementation partner," they're likely seeing dollar signs and not in the good way, just a price tag. They're seeing a heavy price tag. How do you and how should HR teams communicate? These are the resources we need and this is what we're going to see at the end of the tunnel because especially with HR systems, Workday as one example, sometimes it's tough to provide that clear ROI story. So I'm curious what advice you would give practitioners, implementation partners to really communicate to the C-suite leadership, this is why we need this and how we need your buy-in to proceed.
Good question. And I think this is tough for HR also when you come to the table regarding anything related to people, how you really tell that story. I think there's two things. It's the why. And that's true in any conversation you have, like with business cases or anything, the why. And really, why do we need to do this? But then you do need to figure out how to really show how it will save them money in the long run or benefit them. If we don't do this, then this is what's going to happen. I mean, it's amazing what I've seen regarding how much people have had to pay for additional office hours, for instance, or getting additional support because they haven't done the initial investment to have in-house support. So I think, yes, it's dollars, but when you compare it to the additional dollars you might be spending over time, and when you could just be allocating that to headcount, maybe there's somebody already in this role and maybe some of the responsibilities need to go to somebody else so they can concentrate on the HR technology. Get creative. Like you might have what you need in house. This is a great development opportunity for some people, evaluating what you currently have, but also really telling that story like, yes, we have to put dollars now, but if we don't, then this is going to be potential impacts down the road.
I think that comes full circle because you were talking a little bit about the tech hopping and what happens when you come in with only a half baked plan, say, I only need some of these resources. Well, what happens down the road is then, hey, we actually need to acquire an entirely new technology and go through this whole process again. So that makes a lot
Mhm.
of sense. Kind of related, you were mentioning how sometimes there's already someone in the role and overall, when it comes to HR, there's the stigma and the delicate situation of having to go get buy-in from the executive team. Should HR be called HR? Human resources, is that the right terminology for what it looks like today?
Honestly, if the word resources wasn't in it, I'd probably be fine with something about humans because we are about humans. I just think the word resources just is not like we're not, people are not resources. They're what drives the entire success of the company. The work that they put in to produce a product or a service, they're just people. I'm enjoying where people I see people teams. I like that. I've enjoyed seeing where people call HR employee experience because you really are trying to provide a great experience for employees, whether that's empowering them, enabling them to do their best work, but also grow. I love both of those. I just think human resources, it's been around for such a long time that I think we need a rebrand. Because I think that there's certain things that people see HR still as day-to-day transactions, employee relations, which is all true. But HR is bigger than that. We're there to help enable and empower people to do their best work, which gives the company what exactly they're looking for is to be able to provide the products and services at the level that they want.
Well, this has been an amazing interview. Like I said, I tried not to hold anything back and ask some of the tougher questions, and you just rolled with it. So I really appreciate that. The highlight here for me was really making sure you involve the right people during your implementation and avoid shiny object syndrome, right? Where you're hopping across technologies, doing some of the upfront work to make sure that you're going to get the most out of the technology in the long run. So, how can people learn more about you and what you're doing today?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share my information. I don't really have like an official way to reach out to me. LinkedIn's kind of been like the main way I've been connecting with people. So that's primary.
And I'll just add my testimonial that I follow some of Kristin's content on LinkedIn and it's really good stuff. So, I highly
Thank
recommend you
you.
follow her. Anything else before we close out?
No, I don't think so. I think this has been so great being able to talk about like my favorite thing in the world, which is HR technology. So it's so fun. I just love these conversations and our chats. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. Hope to see you in the next episode. And thanks so much, Kristin. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sid.